We are here at ComplexCon to learn from creatives, artists, and culture leaders about why they do what they do and what they think of God, religion, and the church.
All right, man. Hey, we're here once again at ComplexCon, and I got my buddy Zach here with us, man. Tell me more about your brand, Zach.
What's going on? I'm Zach. I'm the founder, creative director of Basketcase Gallery.
Yeah.
I started this project in my dorm room.
Okay.
And now it's a whole thing. We run a whole small business, so we're trying to push the needle, man. That's what we do.
Cool. How long has it been a brand for? How long have you been in business?
So it started in like 2018 in terms of like actually published. I worked on it like privately for a few years before I launched. And it was really small, like maybe 100 purchases every 6 months for years, and then it sort of emerged after I finished college, putting my head down, really focused on, I guess like distributing product as much as I focused on product.
Sure. Yeah. How did you get into clothing design? How did you get into all that?
I got into apparel design, graphic design specifically, designing tattoo stencils in college.
Oh, dang.
I really wanted to get some tattoos when I was in college, but all the stuff that I wanted to get was ended up getting rendered traditionally by tattoo artists, so like very like Americana traditional style.
Yeah.
And I really wanted like some sort of form of realism mixed with it.
Yeah, dude, I can see that.
And so I designed some tattoos.
That's cool.
For me, and then I ended up doing it for my friends. Like my friends would just say like, "Yo, I want to do this," and that's how I started using like Illustrator and Photoshop. And then like a year after that, I started working with apparel. The whole time I did play. I was like super into hoops as a younger guy, so I was really into sneaker culture. And so sneaker culture kind of evolved into like vintage, and then the clothes, and then at the same time I was working on like Photoshop and design for tattoos.
Sure, yeah.
And so it became like a natural sort of like creative project for me, and I launched it my last year of college, and by the time I finished college, it was enough to not stop. So
yeah, sure.
And I was super poor for a long time doing this. I was just like saying super duper bill to bill, but now it's a little better than that.
Well, Zach, I'm really curious, man. You said you were poor. Why didn't you give up? Like, what was that urge? Like, man, 6 months, I'm barely getting 100 sales or whatever.
Yeah.
Why didn't you give up? And what was that, like, that back-burning vision? I would say, what was that burden to not give up?
Yeah. You know, I don't know exactly if there was one reason why I didn't give up necessarily. I think to me it was always like a barter. I was like, I'm not the type of entrepreneur that was like, there was this giant jump off moment for me where I was like, oh, I just like had to quit because there was only one way. I was only winning. Like I was working part-time for a real estate firm, designing flyers and like, you know, living in a 2-bedroom apartment with 5 roommates and like kind of hustling and keeping a lot of shit going at once so that I could like survive. And for me, it was a gradual commitment. Where I held on to it was I was like, if I could have this be a really cool side hustle for long enough, or if this could just not go away, I find a lot of fulfillment getting to have sort of my creative voice refined, and that was enough for me. And I didn't need it to be like there was never the expectation for me personally for this to be my career. But that's just my personality type. Some people need that like guttural, like this is my way, like it has to be this way. That really wasn't my story, and eventually it got to a place where I was like, okay, I'm gonna like it makes sense for me to do this full time, right? And there was somewhat of a risk there. But yeah, I mean, it's not the traditional story in a lot of ways, but I think it's also like a way to go about things in some ways. Like I'm like risk averse in general. You know what I mean? That's more so how I do things. So
yeah, totally.
Yeah,
that's dope, man. Thanks for that. Yeah, Jose and I was telling you this before. We work for a church, and we have like in that church we have like a creative department. We have digital media people. We have even graphic designers and things. I look at a lot of your clothing, your work, and man, like you even said like the realism, the kind of like very like authentic. I mean the vintage like kind of line work. It looks beautiful. Yep. I'm just kind of curious, like as a creative, one of the things we know about the church, like we try to put ourselves in places where there's creative freedom, like freedom to create. Yep. What have you learned about creativity? What have you learned about culture? And just like last year, since your brand's been fully rolled out. Even it could just be some lessons you're learning now.
I think like creative depth and like really the ability to like make incredible creative ideas is like highly personal, and the ability to distribute products is like about everyone else. So like I would say that like idea development, like really learning how to love your own ideas and like make product that's highly personal and impactful and romantic. That's like all you in your own head and your own space a lot of times. But then learning how to like distribute products closer to like waiting tables at a restaurant. And I think like good product and good design kind of exists in like a pendulum swing constantly in between those. Like, and I think a lot of times people think of like making product that is, you know, palatable to people. People will like attribute it to like selling out maybe, but I think that as long as you can keep a part of your creative vision like highly personal, there's moments where having, you know, product that's closer to service than like a personal painting or journal entry is actually useful, you know, especially when you're doing it for work, like it's everyday thing, because it's not every day I think that you want to go and try and write out the most like thoughtful idea. Some days you just want to like show up and do work like a craft. So I think learning how to like ebb and flow in that relationship with your own self and creative work, because creative is highly personal. It's very intrinsic, I would say. And honestly, I'm still figuring that out, you know, and I think learning how to accept that like creative work, a lot of times, you know, like you don't get to control your most creative moments. And so like learning to, I guess, like when there is momentum, when you do feel like, oh, there's something here, to like follow that, because you don't get to control when that happens. I would say. You know what I mean? Like sometimes your best ideas are in inconvenient moments, but learning how to be like very sensitive to that on a personal level is important. You know, because when you're creatively dry and you didn't listen to yourself when you had these like ideas or whatever, you'll be like beating yourself up. So it's a bit volatile, I would say, but I think it's important.
I love that. I'm gonna give you one more question. When you're sharing really like your story of not giving up, you said purpose. Like, man, I don't care if this is like if I get rich off this or if I don't, but I get purpose out of this. We believe as a church our purpose is to love God and love people. How have you used your purpose to really drive that to people? What is the purpose of your company, and what is the story that you're trying to tell? Like, we see a cross. Like, what's the story that you're trying to give to people so they can see the purpose out of it?
Well, I mean, I don't know if I'm qualified to speak on this first, but I mean, I would say, I think I see a lot of my identity in my like relationships and my ability to like hold relationships that are more important than my work first. So I think that's been something that's allowed me to sustain, is like I do see myself as like as a member of a family or as like a partner before I see myself as a professional. Because there are times when like work is like if it's 100% of me, I feel betrayed by the I guess the reality of it in some sense. But I don't know. I think that like there is religious exploration, there's Christian exploration in a lot of my work. But I mean, I wouldn't go as far to say that what I'm doing is an entire exaltation or defamation of Christ. But I think that I do relate to a lot of like important Christian ideals that are about sort of serving and loving people as a primary first-year identity. But at the same time, like I want to be very careful, because I mean, this is apparel. And like this is we don't need any more clothes in this world if we're going to talk about like morality, right? Like, so I want to be really careful to say like I don't know if it's right for me to be giving like I guess any sort of like examination of like what does purpose look like in this. I find a lot of purpose in getting to do creative work, getting to share community, getting to like develop a team, and then before that having a family, maybe starting a family one day, but also like, you know, I mean, but this is apparel too, you know, so I want to be careful. Like, I think it's I don't know if it's like I don't know if I'm in moral position to be making like a, do you know what I mean? Like a totally a statement on like right and wrong necessarily.
Well,
right?
can I maybe as a second to a real last question? What maybe just without feeling like you have to speak on it personally, like to give a definitive statements. What about just your experience? Like, how have you experienced spirituality? Maybe if you've had interactions with the church. I mean, I don't know your story, but what's been your experience?
So yeah, I mean, I grew up in the church. I have a lot of interaction with growing up in the church and whatnot. I think I definitely am super moved by the life and actions of Jesus. I'm very curious and interested in what like the future of the church looks like, because I think the church has been in a bit of a been put and maybe properly put in a weird position like currently, or I guess I think in some ways the church has reaped what it's sown.
Yeah.
And where it currently sits.
Preach.
And so I'm really moved by a lot of values. I'm really moved by like some examples that exist. I think relationships and morality is important. What is that like? I would be careful to move that into like how I feel about the church, just to be honest. But but I think creativity is or doing art, doing creative work for professionally has to come from a deeper place. So so I am interested in figuring out the foundation of where I'm at all the time, and I would say like that's an ongoing project.
Sure. That's awesome. Thanks so much, Zach. Yeah.